Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new malicious compliance stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
First one is titled, You Can't Just Give Away Coffee. I worked as a shift night manager at a local chain pizzeria for some time in my college years. I was hired by Owen, the franchise owner. My store GM was Jay, but he spent most of his time at our new store. There were two other managers, Amy, who was day shift manager, and Bill, who was not officially a manager, but worked on Amy and my days off as the shift manager. This store was probably the most crime-ridden place I've ever worked. They actually had a second drawer just for the case you got robbed. My first solo night, my driver was stabbed during a robbery while getting into his car. Sometime during my first month, the store both got robbed and was broken into. Now we were only a few blocks from the county jail, and the sheriff's office, state police post, M's garage, and right across the street from a firehouse. But that didn't seem to discourage those looking for a quick buck. So shortly after the store getting robbed, I found an old urn-style coffee maker in storage and got an idea. The next day on my way to work, I stopped at the local service supply store, picked up some coffee cups with lids and a little dry erase board. Mind you, I didn't have purchasing abilities yet, just picked it up out of my own pocket. I got to work, set it all up, and wrote on the sign, Police, Fire, M's, help yourself. The first couple days had no takers, but I did sell a couple cups for a few cents. It might have been a week, when someone broke into one of the other businesses in the strip mall. Of course the officers came in asking if we'd seen anything, then helped themselves to a cup of coffee. From then on we almost always had at least one officer either in the store or parked in the lot out front, and suddenly we no longer had a bunch of crime at the store. Not only that, but they were coming in ordering food, sales across the board shot up. It was a win-win in my book. Amy and Bill had both adopted the free coffee policy, and we all took turns restocking the coffee supply since Jay barely added anything extra to the automatic order as it was. Third month woes. We had a store meeting every month. I got in first, fired up the urn, and waited as Amy, Bill and Jay trickled in for the meeting. Amy, Bill, and I all had a cup of coffee as Jay went through usually. And then laid into us on the coffee. Jay, we're not giving away any more of my coffee. Amy, Bill and I looked at each other. We've been buying the coffee and cups, it's no loss to you and sales are up. Jay, we're not a coffee shop and it costs me $1 for every cup, you can't give away $1 all the time. Me knowing full well it was closer to a dime per cup. Once again, you're not buying the coffee, here's the receipt with my card on it. This went back and forth a couple rounds. Amy and Bill tapped out when Owen walked in. Owen wanted to start some type of club card program like buy a card then 5 pizzas get a free pizza. This is when it hit me, I'd combine club card and coffee. As soon as the meeting was over I ran to the back, quickly designed a punch card. I put both punch cards and coffee into the point of sale system. From that day on I sold 2 club cards. The first aforementioned pizza club, the other a coffee club, 12 coffees for $1. I also put up a Buy a Hero a Coffee Club cup, where customers could drop $1 in for the next fire, M's, or police officer to get a card, and it was very popular. The best part was being in the POS. Coffee got automatically placed on the order, no need to ask Jay to approve something extra, and we could show Jay how much each cup actually cost. The Heros still got free coffee, along with a lot more customers. Jay went from thinking he was losing money on coffee to actually losing money on coffee. Owen didn't care because club cards were selling. We did so well the rest of our stores had to start carrying coffee as well. Next one is titled, Tell Me to Shush When You Clearly Can't Adult. Okay, try adulting now. So I was working at a locally owned cell phone repair store, and although I was the only person at this location who had any knowledge of phones, the owner's sister had been given the title of manager. A little background on the owner's sister, let's call her Meg. She was 37 at the time and had never moved out of her parents' house. I had talked to her about this before, and it goes way beyond what you might be thinking. She had never done her own laundry, she didn't know how to cook, and she had only just got her license to drive a couple of years prior. The idea of moving out stressed her out because she didn't know how bills worked or who to call if she got hurt. You get the idea, right? She had been fired from every job she'd ever had for being on her phone at work. Despite being a manager at a cell phone repair store, she could not tell an iPhone 4 from an iPhone 8. This woman made rocks look smart. Anyways, on to the malicious compliance. She often made mistakes when giving people quotes or information on the phone, and I would do my best to quietly give her the correct info. Sometimes she was grateful for the help and other times she would shush me. Well, one day it was really bad and she kept giving out inaccurate information which was costing us repairs because people would drive to the store and I would give them the actual price, which was different than what they had heard on the phone. They assumed bait and switch, but really it was just ignorance on Meg's part. I admit I was probably a little frustrated with her, and that may have come across in my tone despite how patient I was trying to be. I corrected her once again on the info she was giving over the phone and she snapped at me to never interrupt her again. About half an hour later she got a phone call on her cell phone. She looked confused, but that was nothing new. I wasn't concerned until I saw her rummaging through her purse while talking to this person. She pulled out her social security card and gave them the number. I tried to get her attention, but she just glared daggers at me, so I sat back down and shut up. This phone call lasted close to half an hour. She gave them her current and past addresses, her credit card number, her password, her PIN. She spelled out her name for them, it's very long and very Greek, and even have them her home phone number. I quietly sat through all of this and just kept working on the phone I was repairing. When she finally got off the phone, she turns to me and says, "That was the weirdest phone call, AT&T needed to verify my information." I said to her, "Why is that weird?" She said, "Well, I have T-Mobile." My jaw dropped. Like I knew she was stupid, but this was the moment I really understood that. I then told her she needed to call her brother because her identity had just been given away on a silver platter. Now crying, she says to me, "He's going to be so upset, my identity has already been stolen twice this year." Next one is titled, "Got my employer to loosen their dress code." I worked for the medical insurance company with a shield of blue as my first real job after college. They had a 1950s dress code, such as women having to wear pantyhose and skirts or dresses. Men had to wear slacks, not jeans. Men's dress code also said dress shirt with tie and jacket, or sweater. I wore bow ties just to be different, but got a talking to by my boss, who was by the book ex-military. So the next day I came in wearing slacks and a light sweater. I didn't have to wait more than a half hour before I get called into the office and the yelling starts. I just stand there until he finally takes a breath and I tell him I'd like to see the dress code. He gets upset and sends me to HR. I have a long talk to HR and I tell them to read me the dress code. They say they are going to write me up. I tell them they have that right, but I will contact the Department of Labor and report them. I point out the comma, dress shirt with tie and jacket, or sweater. They give me some BS about that not being what it means. They give me a warning. I return to work and write a letter to the Department of Labor after calling them. I was also in the clerical union and gave them a call. I continued to wear light sweaters every day, get sent to HR for a warning that turned into being written up, then threats to be fired. One note, I was not in a job that had any face-to-face dealings with the public, so only my co-workers saw how I was dressed. The union got involved with the state and meetings were held. During this time I was constantly getting stink eye from my boss, who was not allowed to discipline me without a union rep present. In the end, the old school dress code was thrown out and replaced with business casual. Edit. Shortly afterwards, management convinced the employees to vote out the union and the place became even more unbearable. I quit and found a much better working environment. Next one is titled, "Paying the Final Balance for My Student Loan, or So I Thought." This was back in the late 90s, before payments could be made via websites, so all payments had to be made by check and mailed into the loan company. I know, the dark ages. I had finally progressed to the point where I was able to make my final payment on my college student loans. The way this was supposed to work is that I was supposed to call the loan company to receive my final payoff amount and then send that amount in via check. They said that I would receive my final papers within 30 days showing the loan had been paid in full. I wrote out the check for the exact amount that they gave me and promptly mailed it in. After 30 days I was quite pleased to see an envelope in the mail from the loan company. However, instead of the paid in full notice, there was a bill for an additional amount owed. Apparently, I still had a balance of 5 cents. Here is where the malicious compliance comes in. Instead of calling them up and begging them to forgive the remaining balance, I decided to send in the payment coupon with a dime, yes, double what was owed, taped to it. I wrote a note stating that I hope this covers the remaining balance. Did I mention that payment coupon came with a prepaid return envelope? They paid the postage for this. I received the final papers about 2 weeks later. Next one is titled, Try to Make Us Your Personal Baristas? We'll expose you as the slob you truly are. Academia can be a pretty ducked-up place to work, a lot of people with some personality issues and very little accountability. I was a scientist and at a research institute, and the head of our lab was one piece of work. We worked in a big division of many labs that shared a common kitchen with a pretty nice espresso machine and kept a collection of nice espresso and cappuccino cups for everyone to use. Our boss was obnoxious and a bit of a slob. One sign of his slobbery was he just let his dirty cups from his espresso drinks, common cups from the office kitchen, collect in his office. Sometimes, one of us would get so disgusted we would just collect them and clean them for this pathetic baby because we felt he couldn't take care of himself. He drank a lot of espresso drinks. He liked to think he was really busy and came up with what he thought was a genius plan. He would only meet with us if we made him an espresso or cappuccino from the kitchen machine. We all had to become baristas just to talk to this jackass. Before the tyranny of cappuccino making began, sometimes one of us actually would offer to make him one when he really was very busy. So, we could talk during a coffee break. This was not often and we offered to do it. But soon he was demanding it, every time. It was demeaning and annoying. Then he started bragging to the people in our division about it, so we decided enough was enough. We came up with a plan. Every time we met with him, we would bring His Royal Highness his espresso drink and make one for ourselves as well. We would drink ours during the meeting and then leave the cup in his office. He already had enough dirty cups in there, and there was enough general chaos on his many desks when we started that the slow accretion went unnoticed. As planned, first all the good cups that everyone liked ended up in his office, which got everyone's attention, then just all of the cups. People in the other labs were getting really annoyed the cups were disappearing from the kitchen. People would bring more in, and they would disappear as well. Eventually, not too long after we started but after there was a major impact and people were upset, someone else came to his office and saw this disgusting array of dirty coffee cups, their coffee cups, filling his office. He was publicly shamed and people never stopped making fun of him about it. I don't know if he ever caught on as to how we exponentially expanded the number of offending cups, but he lost his appetite for those coffee drinks and we never had to make that a whole one again. Next one is titled, Think You're Impervious to the Law? I'm totally saving that email. The company I worked for at the time no longer exists, so I don't feel too bad about sharing this story. This takes place in the mid-1990s, and I am the sysadmin for a small tech company. We did all sorts of things for clients large and small, but one of the more profitable areas was technical education. Think room after room of PCs for classes and training. Companies send us their people, we teach them databases, or email serving, mainframe access using terminal emulators, that sort of thing. My immediate manager was an okay sort of guy but was always looking for ways to cut money from the budget to look better for his superiors. Things like saying, why do you need 4 meg of RAM in the classroom PCs? You can get by with 2. You get the idea. Well, there was a new version of a well-known server operating system out of a company in the Pacific NW that was rapidly replacing the older novel installations, and there was a great demand for training on this new OS. Let's call it Mount. OS wants us to gear up to teach MT to the companies replacing their older systems. I say great, here are the costs involved with purchasing X copies of the new OS for the classroom PCs. This email went over like a lead balloon. Email back from boss says essentially, no, just use 1 copy for all the systems. I have the CD-ROM in my office, come get it. I reply that we will be in violation of the license agreement for the OS, and could face penalties. Boss emails back, a little testy, to just do what I am telling you to do. So, I wander over to his office, and he hands me a hand-burned CD-ROM copy of the OS, and the license code on a piece of paper. Not good. Once I am back in my office, I email him again, reiterating that this is not a great idea, and could get the company in serious legal trouble. He says to do it, or lose my job. Alrighty then, CYA time. I archive the email chain and print off hard copies for safekeeping. Some months go by, and classes are rolling in and out of the building every week. All seems quiet. Then, due to a totally unrelated issue, the company gets audited. Auditors are everywhere looking for who knows what, but they eventually get to the training area. They quickly see that we do not have license keys for the 30+ systems running the new MT operating system. All hell breaks loose. VPs and CIOs start coming out of the woodwork like roaches. I am called into a meeting with my boss, and every boss up the food chain to the CEO of the company. Rarefied atmosphere to be sure. The witch hunt begins. I am raked over the coals for putting the company in legal jeopardy, and what do I have to say for myself before I am terminated for cause? I was doing what I was ordered to do over my objections, etc. I look over to my boss, who has suddenly developed a bad case of Clintonian memory syndrome, saying, I have no memory of that. I would never authorize breaking the law. Exactly what I was expecting. So, I pull out the file folder with the email hard copies and show the boardroom full of executives the conversation. Boss gets red in the face and accuses me of forging the emails to deflect responsibility for this massive violation. Never in his life has he seen something so underhanded, and surely the board can see he's not responsible for me going off and pirating software for profit. Silence for a moment, as everyone in the room stares holes into me. I reach back into my bag, and pull out the CD-ROM and license code and ask if he wants it back. Some points to consider: there was only one CD burner in the building, attached to boss computer. They were still fairly expensive at the time. Only one real copy of the MT operating system had been purchased by the company. By the boss. Lastly, the Sharpie label on the disc and the license key were written in boss' very distinctive handwriting. On his stationery, with his letterhead on it. CIO looks irritated. Says I can leave. I go directly back to my office and post my resume on the job boards. Got a new job offer in 2 days. The company was hit with massive fines. They never really recovered and went bankrupt the following year. My old boss. I went back to the area a few years later, and he was selling PCs at Best Buy. No dishonor there, but a rather dramatic drop in pay, I presume. Next one is titled, You Want to Pick My Beautiful Tomatoes? Here, try these extra special ones. And then there's the tomatoes. So I'm a horticulturist, heirloom tomato champion, and plant breeder today, right? I got hooked on gardening in school after the teacher taught us about Mendel's pea experiment. Mum fancied herself a gardener, but let little me have a small plot after I annoyed her senseless for some dirt. Turns out I'm innately skilled and have a green thumb. Within a year or two, I was producing better tomatoes and flowers than she did. I went to go harvest some beefsteak slices I'd been watching ripen for days, and they were completely gone. Mum had picked them, and that night I found she served them as a caprese at dinner when family friends had come over. She took credit for them. My flawless big red slices, she said she grew them. We had a huge fight later. I threatened to stop growing them if she stole my crops again. I was informed I would keep growing tomatoes, it was the least I could do to contribute to the family, etc. Why would I not want to share? Next year at the nursery getting starts, I noticed a tray of Cherokee Purple, at the very beginning of the heirloom movement, when it's so hard to find any save mail order. I'd read about them and was so excited to try this new thing, but I swallowed it, and just popped them on the cart. Mum assumed I'd bought beefsteaks like normal. Growing season passes. My tomatoes are ripening, but they are strangely shaped, lumpy, cat-faced and cracked and a weird muddy purple. I pick my first fruits, and take them in and ask Mum to prepare them with dinner. I was sharing as asked. She flipped. Insisted they were diseased, mutated. How had I messed up my crop so bad? By then, I'd sliced one, and my dad and brother wandered in to see what the commotion was. I quickly explained no, these were exactly what my rare heirloom Cherokee purples were supposed to look like, and how important they were as a vanishing heirloom, and also oh they taste amazing. Dad, my brother, and I polished the fruits off, and they asked me to grow more next year. These were the best tomatoes they'd ever had, and so different. Mum refused to try them because they were just too ugly to eat. And my vines were never raided again. Last one is titled, That's Not a Valid Reason for Being Absent. For some context, in my country, when you are sick or absent from class, you have to have a valid reason, and that reason needs to be communicated by your legal guardian, usually on a handwritten note. When you turn 18, you are an adult and responsible for yourself, so you can write these notes yourself. So in high school I didn't take time too serious and would come late now and then, and also skipped some classes, not always on purpose. So at the end of the year my one teacher was missing a note for one of my absent classes and asked me to write one with a reason for my absence. I couldn't think of any good reason then and there, so I just wrote, Clondrun didn't come to class on day X because he didn't want to. My teacher looked at the note, looked at me and simply said, you not wanting to come to class is absolutely not a reason not to come, you would need to be sick or have a doctor's appointment or something. So I asked if I could have the note back, which she gave to me. I threw it away and wrote a new one, this time, Clondrun didn't come to class on day X because he was sick. My teacher looked at the note, looked back at me and just sighed deeply before putting it to the other notes. Thanks for listening.